The whispers began long before the wedding ceremony. Some called Linda a gold digger. Others pitied her, believing her life had ended before it had even begun. At only 19 years old, she was walking toward a man old enough to be her great-grandfather, a 75-year-old sheikh whose wealth stretched farther than the desert itself. Cameras flashed, strangers judged, and social media exploded with cruel opinions. But no one, not a single person, knew the truth hidden behind Linda's quiet smile. And when the doors of the royal palace closed on their wedding night, something happened that no guest, no servant, and no member of the royal family could have imagined. That one unexpected moment would change not only Linda's life, but the lives of thousands of people who had never even heard her name. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Journey of Kindness. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Linda had grown up in a quiet farming village where life was measured by seasons instead of money. Her father had passed away when she was only 12, leaving her mother to raise 3 children alone. Every morning before sunrise, Linda helped gather vegetables, carried water from a distant well, and spent her afternoons caring for her younger brothers. She had dreamed of becoming a nurse one day because she wanted to comfort people who felt forgotten. But dreams often disappear when survival becomes more important than ambition. Medical bills from her father's illness had left the family drowning in debt. Every month brought another letter demanding payment, another warning that they might lose the small house that held every memory they had. When the proposal arrived, it didn't feel like a fairy tale. It felt like surrender. The elderly Sheikh Karim was known throughout the region for his enormous fortune and his quiet, mysterious nature. Few people truly knew him because he rarely appeared in public. Stories painted him as cold, distant, and impossible to understand. Some claimed he had become lonely after losing his wife decades earlier. Others believed he simply wanted a young bride to accompany him during the final years of his life. Linda refused immediately. But as the weeks passed, creditors threatened to seize everything her family owned. Her mother's health began failing from stress. Her youngest brother had to leave school because they could no longer afford books. Every night Linda listened to her mother cry after everyone else had fallen asleep. Those tears broke her heart more than any words ever could. Finally, Linda made a decision that shattered her own dreams. She agreed to the marriage, not because she wanted luxury, but because she wanted to save the only family she had left. The wedding was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Crystal chandeliers reflected thousands of lights across marble floors. Golden decorations sparkled beneath the afternoon sun. Musicians filled the palace with elegant melodies while hundreds of influential guests admired the breathtaking celebration. Yet beneath Linda's beautiful white dress, her hands trembled with fear. Everyone stared at the enormous age difference. Everyone assumed they already knew the ending. No one noticed the sadness hiding in her eyes. As daylight slowly faded and evening arrived, Linda entered the magnificent palace that would become her new home. Servants welcomed her with respectful bows. The palace was silent despite its size, almost as though loneliness echoed through every hallway. She expected fear. She expected pressure. She expected to lose herself forever. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. When Sheikh Karim entered the room later that evening, he looked at Linda with gentle eyes rather than possessive ones. Age had bent his shoulders, but kindness softened every wrinkle on his face. Without speaking for several moments, he carefully placed a small wooden box on the table between them. Inside rested a worn photograph. It showed a young woman smiling beneath a flowering tree. Sheikh Karim quietly explained that the woman had been his wife, Amina, who had passed away nearly 40 years earlier after a long illness. He had never stopped loving her. Every decision he had made since then had been influenced by the promise he whispered to her during her final days, that he would dedicate the rest of his life to helping others. Linda listened in silence. Then came the sentence that shocked her more than anything else. He gently told Linda she would never be forced to become anything she did not choose to be. Their marriage, he explained, had been arranged with one purpose beyond appearances. He had quietly investigated her family long before making the proposal. He knew about her father's sacrifices, her mother's illness, and her own dream of becoming a nurse. He admired her willingness to put others before herself. He confessed that he was searching for someone with compassion rather than beauty. Someone who could continue the charitable foundation he had spent decades building after he was gone. That night, instead of demanding anything from Linda, Sheikh Karim handed her documents establishing scholarships, hospitals, orphan programs, and food banks across several countries. He admitted that his greatest fear was not death itself, but watching years of charitable work disappear into the hands of greedy relatives interested only in inheritance. Linda sat speechless. Everything she believed about him collapsed in a single evening. Over the following weeks, palace life proved nothing like the rumors. Sheikh Karim encouraged Linda to continue her education immediately. Private tutors arrived every morning. Medical professors visited weekly. He insisted she should never abandon her dream simply because she had become his wife. Outside the palace walls, however, judgment never stopped. Newspapers mocked her. Television hosts questioned her motives. Neighbors whispered terrible things about her family. Social media painted her as someone who had traded love for luxury. Every cruel headline hurt deeply because Linda knew the truth but refused to defend herself publicly. Sheikh Karim reminded her that people often judge stories they have never lived. Instead of answering criticism with anger, Linda devoted herself to the foundation's work. She visited hospitals where children battled serious illnesses. She spent afternoons listening to elderly people abandoned by relatives who rarely visited. She traveled to villages suffering from drought, bringing clean water systems funded by the foundation. Everywhere she went, she met people whose pain reminded her of her own childhood. Slowly, purpose replaced fear. Months passed, and Linda's confidence grew stronger. She completed advanced medical studies faster than anyone expected. Doctors admired her determination, not because she held a royal title, but because she genuinely cared about every patient she encountered. Then life changed again. Sheikh Karim's health suddenly declined. The energetic old man who had spent hours discussing charity projects became weaker each day. Physicians from around the world arrived, but age had finally caught up with him. Linda remained beside him through every difficult moment. She cancelled important ceremonies. She ignored public appearances. She simply stayed with the man everyone else had misunderstood. One peaceful afternoon, while sunlight poured through the palace windows, Sheikh Karim smiled with quiet satisfaction. He watched volunteers preparing supplies for another humanitarian mission and softly told Linda he no longer feared the future because kindness had found the right guardian. A few days later, he passed away peacefully. The world reacted exactly as expected. News outlets immediately accused Linda of marrying only for wealth. Distant relatives filed lawsuits demanding control of the fortune. Commentators predicted years of legal battles. But they hadn't read Sheikh Karim's final will. During the official reading, every courtroom fell silent. The overwhelming majority of his fortune had not been left to Linda personally. Instead, it had been permanently placed into charitable trusts dedicated to education, healthcare, disaster relief, orphan support, and poverty reduction. Linda had not inherited endless luxury. She had inherited responsibility. She accepted it without hesitation. Years passed. Under Linda's leadership, hospitals expanded into remote communities where families previously traveled days to receive medical treatment. Thousands of scholarships allowed young students from poor villages to become teachers, engineers, and nurses. New orphan centers gave abandoned children safe homes filled with love instead of fear. People gradually stopped talking about the age difference. They started talking about hope. One afternoon, Linda returned quietly to her childhood village. The dusty roads looked smaller than she remembered. Children played beneath the same old trees where she once dreamed about becoming a nurse. Standing nearby was an elderly woman who had criticized Linda's marriage years earlier. With tears filling her eyes, the woman apologized. Linda simply smiled and embraced her. Because bitterness had no place in the future she wanted to build. As time moved forward, Linda often visited the simple garden where Sheikh Karim and Amina rested side by side beneath two peaceful olive trees. She placed fresh flowers there every year, not because of obligation, but because gratitude had replaced every fear she once carried. She finally understood that true wealth was never measured by gold, palaces, or titles. It was measured by the number of lives transformed through compassion. The wedding night that had shocked everyone wasn't remembered because of scandal. It was remembered because an elderly man chose dignity instead of selfishness, and a frightened young woman chose kindness instead of resentment. Together, they proved that the greatest love stories are sometimes built not on romance, but on sacrifice, trust, purpose, and the courage to help strangers you'll never meet. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Journey of Kindness so more people can discover stories that inspire compassion. Special request. Before you leave, comment with the words, "Kindness always wins," if you believe one act of compassion can change someone's entire life. Linda's journey reminds us that the world often judges people before knowing their truth. Appearances can deceive, rumors can wound, and assumptions can destroy reputations. Yet kindness has a quiet power that outlives every insult, every misunderstanding, and every unfair opinion. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not finding happiness for yourself, but becoming the reason thousands of others find hope again. And perhaps that is the legacy worth leaving behind.